things will happen, but she said they are not training them. She said they're not training.
Do you think that trained
She was saying a specific example, and you said it was false.
She said, quote, they're not training them.
You just acknowledged that you don't know what she was referring to.
I don't know what she's talking
scooping up
about.
U.S. citizens without giving them...
I disagree with the generalization that they're scooping up U.S. citizens.
There's 170 that have been scooped up.
Well, there's over 500,000 illegal aliens that have been deported.
There's little children that have been scooped up that are U.S. citizens.
All right, look.
I know, you don't want the law enforced. I get it. You don't have to yell at me. You don't want the law enforced. I understand.
Listen, look, it is true.
Guess what?
That
On
United
this
States
table, black and white people can
have
yell.
been detained by ICE without
detained and released.
Yeah,
released.
But whether you're detained and released after hours or days, your rights may still be.
In today's video, Ana Navarro absolutely wrecks Scott Jennings in a heated debate on Newsnight with Abby Phillip. Things get fiery as Ana Navarro calls out Scott Jennings for his hypocrisy, especially when he tries to defend the ongoing problems within ICE while downplaying the civil rights violations happening under their watch. Ana Navarro doesn't hold back. She's demanding accountability, transparency, and basic human decency, while Scott Jennings scrambles to justify the system's failures. So let's dive in and watch how Ana Navarro shuts down Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
When you look at some of these interactions between ICE agents and the public, frankly, it's not entirely surprising that that's what's happening as they try to rush these people through the process of getting certified to be on the streets.
Okay, well, in all honesty, I'm athletically allergic. Could not pass the presidential exam when I was in school, could not do a pull-up for a nanosecond. That being said, look, I think this lack of not only the athletic aspect, but also the civics aspect is showing in the interactions we are seeing. There have been at least 170 U.S. citizens that have been detained by ICE. We have seen people get scooped up because they're black in Chicago, U.S. citizen blacks, put into U-Haul trucks, in the back of U-Haul trucks. We have seen teenagers pinned to the ground. We know that there have been more deaths in ICE custody in the last few months than there were in the last 4 years. So, I would hope that even folks who are in favor of deporting everybody, I would hope that there would be some agreement that there needs to be rights, that there needs to be a process, that people need to be allowed to show ID, that they can't just be scooped up in that way and have their rights violated. It's just inhumane what we are seeing in the streets of America.
Or at least that the standards shouldn't be lowered just to meet a quota.
Okay, I just have to respond to this. If you are housing or living with somebody, an MS-13 or a gang member, it is very possible that you could get swept up in that. That is just a reality.
Listen, the vast majority of the people who have been detained do not have criminal records. 75%.
If you're living with a gang member, you gotta know that's a possibility.
That's not the people that were scooped up in this residential building in the middle of the night. You're just making things up. You're making things up. Most of the people that have been detained do not have any criminal records or ties to gangs.
Look, I'm sure you can find an example or two of this, but we also know the situations for a lot of these 170 Americans. And some of them were just happened to be in the same location as other people who might have been targeted by ICE and were still scooped up.
The teenage black boy I was referring to was in a CVS.
To Ana Navarro's point, that apartment building that they raided a couple of weeks ago that housed, frankly, mostly Americans, they only identified 2 alleged Tren de Aragua members. The rest of the people who were arrested, including American citizens, they're not gang members. So that's also happening.
Okay.
But I was asking you about the standards, because the issue at hand here is that the standards are not being met, and B, in some cases, are being slightly lowered to allow more people to get through this process because they have to meet a quota. And when you're talking about law enforcement, is that really what we should be?
You can really tell that Ana Navarro and Abby Phillip are trying to ground this discussion in facts and humanity, because when you look at what's actually happening with ICE, it's not some rare mistake. There have been over 170 documented cases of US citizens being detained by mistake. That's not speculation. That's verified by reports from places like the Los Angeles Times and ACLU. And when Ana brings up the issue of lowering standards for ICE agents, that's a legitimate concern. These are people who hold an incredible amount of power, the ability to detain, to question, even to separate families. If they're being rushed through the system without enough training, both physically and civically, it's no wonder we're seeing these disturbing cases of wrongful detentions and excessive force. Lydia Moynihan tries to shift the conversation to gang members and guilt by association, but that misses the point. Nobody's defending criminals here. The issue is that innocent people, often minorities, are being caught in the crossfire because the system is too sloppy and unaccountable. What Ana and Abby are calling for is simple: higher standards, better training, and a system that respects people's basic rights. Because law enforcement without accountability isn't safety, it's chaos wrapped in authority.
What are you doing?
No, absolutely not. And unfortunately, this is not really an ICE problem. This is a problem across the board. I think as many as 80% of police officers are overweight, and so we've seen standards just decrease across the board. Now, my understanding is that they aren't decreasing the standards. They're just saying that a lot of people are failing, and I think that's okay, right? They have a lot of people who are interested in joining. Not all of them are going to meet the criteria, and that's the reality.
A lot of people are joining because a lot of people need jobs. A lot of people are failing because we don't teach civic in schools, and that's a problem. And
They're offering $50,000 bonuses.
a lot of people are taking the job because there's student loan forgiveness. And I hope they don't lower the standard, because the last I checked, it was the DEI candidates that needed the standard lowered. But now it seems like the people who want to work for ICE might get their standards. Let's just see how this all plays out.
And that's not what's happening. They're failing. The system is working. They have fitness standards. They have standards for civics. If you fail the standards, you don't get in. So the story is that you have a system in place designed to weed people out who shouldn't be in, and it's working. That's a good thing.
I will say this. So here's what we know, at least for now. In February, the requirements were this: 32 sit-ups in a minute or less, 22 push-ups in a minute or less, 220-yard sprint, 1.5 mile run. Now, the standard is 15 push-ups as opposed to 22. So it's still 32 sit-ups, 1.5 miles, in slightly less time than before. So there's been a slight adjustment. Who knows why? You need to do 7 fewer push-ups than before, but
so the standards were lowered.
You still have to meet an athletic standard, and you still have to meet a civic
So they lowered the standard.
But standards still declining.
I also think, I mean, to me, also the civics part is huge, because knowing people's rights in this country is part of what you need to know if you're going to be violating them potentially as a law enforcement officer, or at least you have the power to do that.
But there was another claim tucked into that report, which is the people themselves are misrepresenting themselves. Say they're lying. See, that's a decline of standards too. It's a matter of character. It's a matter of soul craft. So it's not just you got a decline of standards across the board, and too often you want to scapegoat the most vulnerable. It must be the black folk and brown folk responsible for the decline of standards. No, get off the crack pipe. That's not true at all. What's really true is the decline of standards across the board, and people acting as if they're so athletically on the cutting edge, and when it's time to take the test, they can't pass it.
And if you lie on your application, perhaps
You can really feel Ashley Allison and Abby Phillip trying to bring this conversation back to what actually matters: public safety and accountability. Because here's the truth: lowering standards for agencies like ICE isn't just about fitness tests or quotas. It's about the long-term consequences of putting unprepared, undertrained officers in positions of extreme power. Studies from the Department of Justice and the GAO have shown that poor training directly correlates with higher rates of misconduct and wrongful detentions. And when you have agencies struggling with recruitment, offering huge bonuses or student loan loan forgiveness just to fill spots. You're not attracting people who are committed to justice. You're attracting people who need a paycheck. That's dangerous when lives are at stake. And let's not ignore the civics aspect either. A 2022 Annenberg survey found that only 1 in 3 Americans could name all 3 branches of government. That means a lot of people applying to law enforcement roles don't even fully understand citizens' constitutional rights, the very rights they're supposed to protect. So when Abby and Ashley push back on the idea that the system is working, they're right to be skeptical, because a system that keeps lowering the bar isn't working. It's quietly breaking, and the people paying the price are the ones with the least power.
Rely on the job.
Well, just
And
today
if
there
you
was an
lie,
ICE police officer whose weapon discharged and injured a U.S. Marshal and the suspect because they were using the service weapon to bang on the window of a suspect. I mean, I don't know. I mean, these are the types of things that just seem like, is there proper training happening here when it comes to ICE?
There's not. We've all seen it. And there should be.
You definitively state that they're not being properly trained. Do you know that?
They're shooting dogs. They're shooting dogs in people's that have been locked in people's bathrooms. They're abandoning small children alone in cars while they. No, it's not false. Look it up. Don't just say false. I actually
Abandoning small children.
Yes,
they turned the children over to HHS.
There were actually
custody.
small children abandoned in a highway in a
You
car
have these
in
vague
Cicero,
anecdotes,
Illinois.
and you make these sweeping
how much
statements
more
that they're not
specific
training.
would you like me
they're
to
not
get
training ICE.
with,
Of course
with
they go through
examples
training.
of what is happening?
Of course they're training them.
Well, they're training them, then they're not learning the stuff. They're definitely violating human rights, Scott.
Well, I disagree with you.
Okay, well.
Well, look, Scott, she had a specific example. Sounds like you were unfamiliar with it.
I'm not aware of her example. Here's what I know.
Okay, so
under
you don't
Joe
know
Biden,
whether-
under Joe Biden, they didn't enforce federal immigration law. Now we do. We're having hundreds of thousands of interactions.
my point is that you
things
just
will
said,
happen, but she said they are not
I know,
training
but you-
them.
but
She
no,
said
but
they're not
she-
training
she-
Do you
them.
think
no,
that?
she
Do you
said
think
it
that
was
trained? Do you
fair.
think that trained
She was saying a
ICE
specific
agents
example,
would,
and
No,
you said it
her
was
first
false.
statement was-
citizens?
She said,
You just
quote, they're not
acknowledged
training
that.
them.
You just
We all
acknowledged that
see it.
you don't know what she was
Do
referring
you
to.
think?
I don't. I
Do
don't
you
know
think
what
that
she's talking
scooping
about.
up U.S. citizens without giving them?
I disagree with the generalization that they're scooping up U.S.
There's
citizens.
170 that have been.
Well, there's
scooped
over
up.
500,000 illegal aliens that have been
There's
deported.
little children that have been
1.6
scooped
million
up
have
that are U.S.
self-deported.
citizens.
All right, look.
There is
I know you
video.
don't want the law enforced.
There is
I get it.
video
You
of
don't have to
black
yell at me.
kids.
You don't want the law
All right,
enforced.
You're the
I
one yelling
understand.
too.
Listen, look, it is true.
Guess what?
That
On
United
this
States
table, black and
citizens
white people can
have
yell.
been detained by ICE without.
Detained and released.
Yeah,
Released.
But
Released.
whether you're detained
After
and released
hours or
after
days of
hours or
being
days,
held?
your rights may still be violated, and that's still an issue that people have
Can
a
I
right to
just-
be concerned
Can I
about.
just throw a curveball? The reason why they're often detained though is also because of the color of their skin.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's, again, a sweeping blanket general. Do you know of a
Well, we got
specific
data for that.
instance
No,
where
no, we
someone,
got
I mean,
data for that.
honestly,
Actually,
Question, do
the
you know
answer
a
is
specific
They got
instance
data
of
for
what?
the
that.
answer
I mean,
is
you're saying they're
hold
not
on a
training.
second.
You're saying they're racist.
The
I mean, these are
answer-
I
blanket
didn't say that.
statements.
That was a blanket
That's
statement.
The
wild.
answer is yes, we do know of specific
a blanket
instances
statement.
in which people, American citizens,
Yep.
have been arrested because they happen to be in a particular place and look a certain way. That has actually happened. They're documented. So this is
And
not
released.
guesswork that we're doing here. Yeah, but they're still detained. They're still arrested without their rights being given to them. That is still happening.
Alright, Abby Phillip and Anna Navarro are trying to get Scott Jennings to face something that's been documented again and again, that ISIS problems aren't just isolated mistakes, they're systemic, and this isn't speculation. The Department of Homeland Security's own Inspector General released multiple reports showing ICE has repeatedly violated its own detention standards, everything from inadequate medical care to excessive force and unlawful detentions of US citizens. In fact, a 2021 review by the GAO found that ICE couldn't even verify citizenship properly in several cases, leading to American citizens being wrongfully detained for weeks. That's not about enforcing the law, that's about failing to follow it. And when Scott Jennings says things happen, it downplays the reality that these things involve people losing their freedom because of bureaucratic negligence or racial profiling. And Anna Navarro's point about training is dead on. ICE spends less than half the training hours that Border Patrol agents get, according to DHS data. So when you arm undertrained officers, send them into high-pressure environments, and then justify every mistake as part of enforcement, you're setting up a system that breeds abuse, not accountability. What Abby and Anna are calling for isn't soft on crime, it's smart on law. Because law enforcement that violates rights isn't protecting America, it's betraying what America stands for. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.